What's going on, guys? It's Rogan. I'm in here, and welcome to episode 2 of the off-season. So we're going to be talking about all of the releases that have happened from October 4th right the way through to this week. If it's happened before October 4th, there will be another video that's already up on the channel talking about all of those releases. So if you want to go and check that out, feel free to look previous videos on the channel. It will also be linked in the description if you want to go and check that out. But we're going to be starting from the newest releases and then working our way back to last week, so last Monday. So, starting off, we have some news from the Houston Outlaws. So, the Houston Outlaws have actually released their DPS player Happy. So, as you know, they'd already released pretty much their entire tank line apart from Piggy, and they've released all of their support line. So, now I believe all that's really left on the team is Jake, Piggy, and Dante. So, they have 3 players left on the team, which are probably built around. I'm surprised that they really released Happy, but this it kind of feels like they're going to go Western, but they have Piggy on the team, so they could still go mixed. But releasing Happy is a shock to me. He did quite well for them last season. I fully expect Happy to find a place he won't be out of a job for long. I mean, there are plenty of teams that would want to take on a DPS talent of his caliber. I mean, there are so many teams in NA, like there's the Toronto Defiant, the Washington Justice. I mean, heck, even the Dallas Fuel would take a look at him. There are teams in APAC. I mean, the Spark, the Charge. He could go back to the Charge if they really want him. So Dynasty really, anywhere could really take him. He is a starting level talent, and I don't expect him to be out of a job for long, as I said. So, moving over, we have some Vancouver Titan news. So, they pretty much cleaned house. They've parted ways with Dalton, Fred Wiener, Chansik, Teru, Fire. They basically released their entire team. Do I expect some of these players to find a team? I mean, maybe to players like Dalton, maybe players like Teru. I might expect them to find a team at the bottom of the barrel, maybe a Valiant if they're still going cheap, maybe a Charge if they want to go on APAC. Maybe Spitfire if they want to go and take some American talent in. But Boston is also a potential landing place for them, but I don't see them going to any big teams because they weren't really the best talent this season. I mean, they don't really have a good resume going for them after this past season, going 1-15, which is the same spot that all the Spitfire players are in. But there's another video talking about them. So yeah, the Vancouver Titans have completely cleaned house. They're going to be going for a fresh start, which is the second time that they're doing this since they released the Runaway roster. Whether or not they try and get the Runaway roster back, because there are quite a few of them as free agents at the moment, then that's a different story. But at the moment, it seems like they're going to go take another crack at the Contenders talent, which is how they got this team. So we're just going to have to wait and see on this situation and see what they end up going with. So, moving over, we have some Soul Dynasty news. So, Soul Dynasty have parted ways with main support Animal, off tank and main tank, Tuyu and Marvel. So yeah, and Cebu, I'm gonna completely butcher this, but Cebuli, they've also parted ways with, who has retired from professional Overwatch. So, do I expect any of these players to find jobs? Yes. I mean, Marvel is a starting level main tank. He just had to fight with Gesture, who was more flexible than him. He's a fantastic round. Tuyu has really come into his own since he got promoted from the Seoul Academy team. I expect any APAC talent to want to pick him up. Yeah, heck, he could even go to a Washington Justice or a Toronto Defiant if he really wanted to. As for Animal, I could maybe see him going back to a team like the New York Excelsior, but it's kind of hard because he's had so many cracks at the Overwatch League and he's been released pretty much every single time. So we're just gonna have to wait and see on that situation. Now, moving over, we have some Dallas Fuel news. So, Dallas Fuel have parted ways with main support Jexa. This is not of any surprise. I believe I covered this last week, but yeah, Jexa has such a limited hero pool. He can only really play Lucio, and then his Mercy and his Break were probably in the bottom. That most definitely were in the bottom half of the rankings for main supports. So, Dallas Fuel wanting to upgrade, not a surprise there. Now, this is where the shocker comes in. So, the San Francisco Shock. I said in a tweet yesterday that the San Francisco Shock fans should be ready and should have they should have the tissues ready, because they have parted ways with quite a lot of their teams. So we have got Glister going on to free agency. We've got FD God, Smurf, Ons. I believe there was one other as well. Oh no, just Smurf Ons. Yeah. So they've pretty much cleaned out their entire team. The only players they have left on their roster are Super, Choi, and Violet. Oh, so yes, it also released Twilight. I should add to that, which I believe I have mentioned in last week's video as well. But it is also expected that Super and Choi will retire in the off-season. We're not really sure when that's going to happen or if that's going to happen. We're going to have to wait and see. But that report came out as of today recording this video, so we'll see and if any updates on that actually happen. But it seems that they're going to be building around Violet, because most reports are saying that Violet has signed a new contract at the Shock. So they're going to be building a new team around Violet. They're probably going to bring in some younger talents. I expect them to bring in like kind of like a passing of the torch moment for the Shock, because obviously they've had this one dominant roster for about 3 seasons now. It makes sense at some point that these players are going to want to move on, and it's sad that they're doing it now, but hopefully they've got the money to rebuild in a stronger image, and I don't expect them to be away from the top for long, even if it takes a few games of gelling this new team together, because Krusty is a phenomenal coach, and with the news that Ninek is coming from the Philadelphia Fusion to once again work with Krusty, I have full faith that this Shock team will be absolutely fine. I don't expect them to drop off in any significant way. So yeah, there were quite a few sad goodbyes for the Shock fan base, but it's for a better future at the end of the day. These players weren't going to stay with them forever, and at least they have the entire offseason to rebuild now. So, in other shocking news, we actually have the NYXL for the first time since inaugural season, because as you know, he joined them in the inaugural season. We have the NYXL saying goodbye to Jonak. So Jonak is now a free agent, and that is one hell of a flex support to have on the free agency list. There are so many teams I sure would love to pick him up. Wherever he wants to stay in APAC, there are teams like the Spark, there are teams like, I mean, heck, the Dragons would probably want to look at him. If you want to go and look at NA, we've got teams like the Shock who would probably look to pick him up now. We've got teams like the Justice, as again Toronto Fuel would probably look at him after releasing Ravel. They have builders, so maybe not, but there's so many potential landing spots for this man, and I am so excited to see where he goes. But yeah, Jonak is on free agency now, so surprising, but not surprising, because there's only so long one player can dedicate to one team before they want to move on to new challenges and new horizons. So, speaking of another player who's been with this team for a long time, but he's only really gotten a chance to shine since Elsa retired, and that is Late Young. He is also on the free agency list. The Chengdu Hunters revealed on the 7th of October that Late Young will be entering free agency. So, again, whether or not he gets picked off is a question, loads of question marks for me. I don't know if he will, because obviously he is mostly Zarya and D.Va, and as you know from what we're seeing for the playtest of Overwatch 2 at the moment, Zarya isn't looking to be very meta, and D.Va gets melded by a lot of things. So unless there are some major tank reworks, I see a lot of these D.Va players either having to learn and adapt onto different off tanks and main tanks, or to just get left behind in the league. So yeah, sad, but I wouldn't say expected. I kind of expected him to stay on the team. But yeah, Late Young being released into free agency. Now, I will cover all of these briefly because I covered them in a separate video. As you know from my previous video, the London Spitfire parted ways with Blase, Hybrid, Calyx, Morphig, and Hardy, and kept on Sparker and Shax, while Reaper retires from professional Overwatch. So, yeah, another rebuild for the Spitfire, but at least they've kept some of the most important elements of the team to rebuild around this year, so they're starting completely fresh. More thoughts on this are in the other video, obviously, but yeah, I'm happy with who we kept and excited to see where they decide to build from going forward. Now, quickly touching on the Boston Uprising, they have actually surprisingly parted ways with Myungbong. I don't expect the Myungbong to be out of a job for very long. He is one of the best flex supports in the league. I'm surprised he was on Boston for so long, but I mean, he was only really there for like a year and a half, but still, he is a top talent in that flex support role. I expect any team, any APAC team, any team mixed rosters or fully Korean rosters, I expect him to be picked up. He is one of the best in the league, and I don't see a world where Myungbong doesn't get picked up, and it would be a crime if he didn't get picked up, because, like I said, he is one of the best going. Speaking of one of the best going, someone who actually proved themselves, we're going to talk about some NYXL news now. So, some sad news coming out of the NYXL camp as Friday has retired from professional Overwatch, while Feather, Guangdong, and Kalios have all gone into free agency. So that just leaves the NYXL with Flora on their roster at the moment, I believe. As you know, Yap Kong had already gone into free agency, I believe. So yeah, I expect people like Kalios, he's just come back to the league. I'm sure he's wanting to prove himself more, and I'm sure there are plenty of teams that will be looking for an experienced talent of his caliber to come in and play the off tank role. Meanwhile, Guangbun has really proved himself on the hit scan. Whether or not we're in a hit scan meta going into Overwatch 2, I think will really dictate whether or not he gets signed. And I think that's the same for all of these hit scans that have been released, like your Answers, your Hybrids, your Glisters. Maybe Glister stands a better chance because of its hero pool, but a lot of these hit scans are going to be determined on whether they get a team or not, depending on the meta. Maybe teams will pick them up just on the off chance, but we don't really know at the moment. But I expect Feather to probably find a team. Feather was a decent level main DPS, starting DPS level for the NYXL. He could probably find a team on a place like the Spark or the Charge if he wanted to stay in there, or even the Fusion. But yeah, moving over to the Fusion, we actually have them parting ways with two of their DPS talents. They're parting ways with EQO, which is shocking. They haven't actually released him. I believe he's still under contract, but he's there allowing to explore options, so Fusion fans, don't worry, he could still resign. Meanwhile, this other one they have actually said their goodbyes to, which is Shockwave now. There are so many different places I can see Shockwave going to. The two EU teams spring to mind immediately, because obviously location based for him, he is an EU talent, so Paris seems like a good location for him to go after them just releasing Onigod. London, it's a little less likely because obviously Sparker's on the team, but if they wanted an experienced talent, then they could bring in Shockwave as well. Now, EQO, I could see them using him as trade fodder for some Eastern talent. If they want to stay in APAC and they want to go for Korean or for Eastern, then I can fully expect them to use EQO as some kind of trade fodder for a team that are looking to offer. So maybe, I mean, there's loads of talk of where Yaki could go, but Yaki to Fusion is a possibility because obviously the Florida Mayhem are looking to go Western, and Ikuro being Israeli, it adds up. So we'll have to wait and see where he goes. But I kind of would like to see him go elsewhere and offer his services elsewhere, because obviously Ikuro coming into the limelight through the Overwatch World Cup and has been on the Fusion since season 1. Now, wrapping this up, we have the Hongju Spark and the Guangzhou Charge actually releasing some players, and yeah, so the Guangzhou Charge have parted ways with Kariv. Meanwhile, pretty much a lot of the other rest of their team have gone and retired. So will Kariv find a place? I don't doubt that. Kariv is a top level talent, and I fully expect him to find a home, whether he goes back to a team in NA or if he goes back, if he stays in APAC. I fully expect him to just find somewhere. But yeah, they parted ways with Jaehyun, Michele, Mondu, and Kareev. So Mondu, Michele, and Jaehyun. I believe Jaehyun's retired. Michele and Mondu. I don't expect Michele to maybe find a place. Mondu, he was a decent level main support. Maybe a team like the Valiant could pick him up, or one of those lower level to bottom table teams could probably pick him up and give him a job. I wouldn't doubt that. But yeah, well, we're just gonna have to wait and see where those players end up landing. And finally, as I said, wrapping up this video, the Hangzhou Spark have parted ways with one of their legends, IDK. Which is quite shocking for me because IDK has been one of the most consistent players on their team. But he is obviously now in free agency, and I fully expect IDK to find a team. Whether he could definitely find the place on the charge. I mean, they've just released their entire support line, so I don't expect him to be out of a job for long. Another big thing coming out of the LA Gladiators camp is that Birdring has actually retired from professional Overwatch. So this came as quite a shock to me, especially being a Spitfire fan. The Junior Birdring started off the first 2 seasons at the London Spitfire, but what a career that man has had, and honestly, the video they released for him on the Gladiator socials was just perfect. It perfectly summed up the man's career, and I wish him best of luck in whatever he wants to do next. I believe he said he wants to try streaming, so look out for Birdring on Twitch or YouTube, wherever he decides to go. But yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch on this, on losing such a talented DPS talent, and the league won't be the same. Professional Overwatch has been pretty much shaped by Birdring. He was in Apex, he then moved over and joined obviously the London Spitfire, and then finished his career at the Gladiators, getting I believe 5th or 6th place in this year's playoffs. So what a career the man has had, and well done, just fantastic. What a career you've had. Finally, as well, just touching on another retirement we've had Rascal actually retiring from professional Overwatch, and he's going to be moving over into a coaching position. Where he goes, we don't really know yet. Some are speculating that he might go to the Shock, and then others are speculating he may go elsewhere. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Rascal, but yeah, Rascal has retired from professional Overwatch. Pretty much wraps up all of the free agency news from this past week. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye!